Good morning. It's nice to see all of you. Thank you for joining us this morning. I want to welcome you to the 5th annual scholarship breakfast for the School of Social Work. Thank you all for being here, and you all are a very good-looking group, so thank you. My name is Vaughnetta J. Barton, and I am a longtime field instructor, also known as a practicum instructor at the School of Social Work. I have had a wonderful experience over the years to have a firsthand experience in working with many talented students during their year, of community service as they put into practice what they've learned in the classroom. I graduated from the School of Social Work in 1997, and I focused on children, youth, and families, but specifically in social work administration. And so while at Big Brothers Big Sisters, I was contacted by the school asking if our agency would be willing to provide a practicum placement for one of their students. And I was very interested because I had heard wonderful things about the practicum program. And my experience as a practicum student in 3 different placements was very exciting. So I said, yes, we will sign on. And one thing I should share is Sharon, my first student, was a star. And I soon learned that the School of Social Work was a great resource, not only for the organizations that I was affiliated with, but also for the community in general. And so in future positions with dads and agency serving fathers who want to re-engage in their children's lives, and then also later at the Foundation for Early Learning, I had the opportunity to interview and work with a variety of graduate students and thoroughly enjoyed the work that they provided, not only personal enrichment, but I should also say as an asset to the agency and the work that we were doing. And so today I am proud to say that I am a project manager for Communities in Action, a very exciting new project, a broad-based community project initiative that was launched by the School of Social Work with many of the school's long-standing practicum agencies and partners in Southeast and Central Seattle. This high-impact, science-driven program with proven results in the communities across the country is being brought home to Seattle, where it was pioneered, it was tested and refined in the last 30 years. And so Communities in Action represents what the School of Social Work does best. The school creates changes that are measurable. They are creating changes that are measurable, provide measurable different benefits for children and families in our most vulnerable neighborhoods. We appreciate Dean Eddie Uehara's vision and her support of this effort to lift up the lives of our citizens in our community. So I'd like to introduce Eddie Uehara, a woman of many firsts. She is the first endowed dean in social work at a public university. She is the first woman of color to lead the University of Washington's School of Social Work, and she's a noted scholar and popular professor in her own right. So every day, she leads and inspires us in amazing ways. And I would like to take a moment and ask you to help me welcome Dean Eddie Uehara. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaughnetta, for that extraordinarily kind introduction. You forgot to mention I'm probably the shortest dean in the whole University of Washington's history. Good morning, everyone. I want to both welcome you to the school's 5th annual Student Scholarship Breakfast and to reiterate what Vaughnetta said. You are not only the most attractive-looking crowd, you're also the most intellectually scintillating and generous. So thank you so much for being here this morning. I want to thank our very generous sponsors this morning: Regents Blue Shield, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, ERA Living, Casey Family Programs, and Seattle Children's Hospital. Thank you so much for your generosity. And yes, thank you. I also want to extend a heartfelt thanks to our phenomenal table hosts And to each of you sitting at a table this morning, this is not an exaggeration. We simply couldn't do what we set out to do this morning without the help and participation of each and every one of you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. My deepest thanks also to our very distinguished guest, Eric Liu. Eric is, among many things, a celebrated author, educator, civic entrepreneur, visionary pragmatist, and social change agent. His latest volume, The Gardens of Democracy, A New American Story of Citizenship, the Economy, and the Role of Government, has been described as a must-read for those who seek a way forward out of America's dangerous gridlock. And finally, a very special thanks to Vaughnetta Barton, our MC for today's event, who said yes, absolutely, without hesitation, well, more or less without hesitation, when we asked for her help this morning. Vaughnetta, your lifelong commitments and accomplishments in leadership and your current leadership of communities in action is an inspiration to all of us. So thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you. Now, like all of you in the audience, I'm looking forward to Eric's talk this morning, but I want to stop for a moment to say a word about our awesome students and the importance of the kind of commitments we're going to make to them this morning. So, who are our students? 4 things I always remind you of at this point in my talk that I'd like you to keep in mind about them. First, these students are extremely bright and very academically accomplished. The average GPA of the applicant admitted to our MSW program this year is, again, just over 3.6. Second, they are dedicated to service. They enter our program with an average of more than 3 years of paid social services under their belts, and well over a quarter of them have done service in Service Corps volunteer organizations. Third, they are extremely passionate. Whether they focus that passion on lifting the quality of life and life chances of children in foster care, bringing jobs and services to neighborhoods or tribal communities, meeting the complex care needs of people with life-threatening illnesses such as cancer, supporting our elders to maintain rich and productive lives, or redefining what's possible through innovative policy and legislative change, our students are, no doubt, passionate change agents. And finally, they are very diverse. In fact, our student body is the most diverse on the UW campus. 56% of our undergrads and 43% of our grad students are students of color. Among our MSW students, 48 are the first in their families to attend graduate school, and more than 80% of our students qualify for financial aid. The vast majority work while attending school, and nearly half must support dependents while studying for their degrees. Now, these passionate, dedicated, bright, but financially burdened students are applying to the School of Social Work in record numbers. And this year, for the first time in history, we received more than 1,000 applications for 110 slots in our flagship MSW program, so we broke our all-time record. Students come to the school quite simply to study with the best, to learn with the best. And our MSW program, as most of you know, is ranked 3rd in the nation among nearly 200 advanced social work programs. And recently, our national accrediting body described the school as a center of social work excellence, the first time this accolade has ever been bestowed on a school of social work, and we're very proud of that fact. Yes, please. And when our students graduate from our school, they join the ranks of the nation's most illustrious social work alumni, many of whom are sitting in the room with us this morning. The service and leadership our students will provide will be even more important in the coming decades when our global society will see a dramatic rise in the need for human services, particularly in the areas of health, mental health, aging, and child welfare. So what do these amazing, awesome students need from us right now? Now more than ever, they need our help to follow their dreams. They need us to give so that they might give. Our students' needs are so great that even after they receive federal and state financial aid, many cannot afford to come to school without additional help. And these are our scholarship students. These are the students we ask you to help this morning, and I want to thank you in advance for your generosity to them and to us. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Eric Liu. Now earlier I referred to Eric as a visionary pragmatist, and Since he tends to avoid all conventional labels, I hope he'll forgive me for applying this descriptor to him this morning. I don't use the term pragmatist as we often do in politics when we say, Congressman X gives more weight to pragmatic concerns than to values. Nor do I mean it to contrast between the concrete and the abstract, as in when we say, that idea is fine in theory, but how does it work pragmatically? What I do mean is that Eric Liu is a visionary pragmatist in the same vein as the great American pragmatists and social change agents, Jane Addams and John Dewey. As pragmatists, Dewey and Addams believe that how we think about social reality has everything to do with how we act on that reality, and at the end of the day, action is thought's greatest gift. And so they taught a young nation to think and act differently about the central place of public education and social welfare in a thriving democracy. Now fast forward a century or so, and both public education and the social safety net are fragile. Our democracy caught in the thicket of American politics that is both polarizing and paralyzing. Could it be that the time has come not just to think deeply, but to think very differently about the nature of democracy and the future of our society? In Gardens of Democracy, Eric Liu and Nick Hanauer say, yes, it is time, in fact, it's past time, to think and thus to act differently. And they offer an amazing set of pragmatic tools to help us imagine the future into reality. So friends, we are very fortunate to hear from Eric this morning. I'm confident this will be one of the most galvanizing conversations you'll have over coffee and eggs this year, and you can hold me to that next year. And now, with that modest build-up, it is my great pleasure to welcome our guest speaker, the visionary pragmatist, at least for this morning, Eric Liu.
Dean Uehara, thank you so much. That was really just a very powerful introduction. And to me, the description that you were offering of this ecosystem here, not just this beautiful room that's gathered here today, but the larger ecosystem of the School of Social Work and its friends, its family, its supporters, its students, its alumni, is pretty remarkable. And some of the things that you had to say and that Vaughnetta, you had to say as well, I think there are so many ways in which we who get to live and work in Seattle maybe become inured a bit to how darn lucky we are, right? That we take for granted on a regular Tuesday morning that you get a view out a window of a room like this, that you get to be in a place like this. And one of the ways I think we get to, or tend to take things for granted, is to overlook the incredibly valuable jewels and gems that we have in our own institutions here. The University of Washington itself, of course, but I think the School of Social Work, from a national and global perspective, is just one of those jewels. And, I don't need to tell you, you're here. But I do think that we all need to tell more people outside this room about just how powerful and transformative this institution is, particularly with your leadership, Eddie. Your spirit of open-heartedness and very kind of free dot connecting across domains and disciplines, between practice and action, all the ways in which you're describing, I think is, number one, it's inspiring, but number two, you can see how it's contagious. You can see in everybody you talk to who's involved with the School of Social Work, and I'm glad to have caught the bug from you as well. I really wanted to, I plan to speak this morning a bit about some of the ideas from my most recent book, The Gardens of Democracy, and I will in a moment, but just listening to these remarks from Vaughnetta and Dean Uehara made me think a little bit just about, well, among other things, about pragmatism and about this great tradition that we are all inheritors of if we care about social work, of John Dewey and Jane Addams and that whole generation of people who were pragmatic, not in the sense of I'll do whatever it takes or I hate ideas, but pragmatic only in the sense that the value of an idea is to be found in its actual application in the world. I studied law, not social work, and one of the great heroes of the law Another pragmatist, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, has a line that says, "The life of the law is not logic, it is experience." And I think the life of social work is not logic, it is experience. And experience demands a couple of things. It demands, in the first place, just awareness. It demands awakeness, right? That you be able to see and sense on every level what it is that you're going through and feeling, but also what it is that people around you are going through and feeling, right? So that it demands that level of kind of full sensory perceptiveness that, frankly, our times do not reward or cultivate so much anymore. But it also demands a kind of empathy that I think our times also don't demand so much anymore. Because this is, for a variety of reasons, technology and media maybe having a lot to do with it, this is an age of kind of remarkable narcissism. And not just among the much maligned millennials and teenagers who are always on their devices. It's all over our culture, our popular culture and our political culture. And this capacity for empathy, for truly not only being aware of your own experience, but imagining what another might experience, is foundational to this ability to perceive and to experience. And so I think one of the things that the School of Social Work does, the reason why it exists, is not only to train X number of graduates who go out into the world and whose support you are providing and helping by coming to a gathering like this and therefore helping to change the world, but also the purpose of a place like the School of Social Work is to remind everybody around it, other parts of this university, other parts of this city, and other parts of this country, what it means truly in a head and heart way to experience life. And to make it okay to talk about life in those terms. A bunch of years before I wrote The Gardens of Democracy with my friend Nick Hanauer, I wrote a book probably about almost a decade ago now called Guiding Lights, about great transformative, life-changing mentors and teachers from all different walks, all different domains. And I spent a couple of years traveling the country interviewing hundreds of these remarkable people from, you name it, human services, the military, arts, sports, business, technology, education. And because they were so diverse and so disparate in their languages and their vocabulary of profession, I came to have to find a couple of universal questions that I could use as keys to unlock conversation no matter where I went. And the two questions I landed on were simply these: who's influenced you, and how do you pass it on? That was it. That was all I needed. With those two questions, I could go pretty much anywhere and open up with anybody a conversation not only about themselves, but about, again, their ecosystem, about the environment that had formed and shaped them, and about their perhaps suddenly rekindled awareness of their own responsibility to shape others in that environment. I invite you, and maybe some of you already are, even right now, just to think about who's influenced you and how do you pass it on. Right? That is the work of social work, to be mindful always of the answers and the ever-changing answers to those two questions. I've spoken a lot already this morning about the idea of ecosystem. And this really brings me to the ideas that I had intended to share when I came up here and want to share with you now, that derive from both this book, The Gardens of Democracy, but also in the same spirit of trying to practice what I'm preaching here. I run a nonprofit called Citizen University that really has worked over the last few years to try to put into application some of the ideas that I've written about and some of the ideas that I've been describing about what it means to be and to practice being a powerful citizen. What it means on the level of values, what it means on the level of understanding of the systems that shape our community, and what it means just in terms of hard skills of moving people, living with people and moving them in a certain direction. And so the work both of the Gardens of Democracy and this organization, Citizen University, really boil down to three ideas that I wanted to share with you briefly this morning, just as food for thought. And hopefully they will be, well, in a sense, seeds that will sprout in your minds and in your hearts even after we leave today. The title of this book, The Gardens of Democracy itself, has a little bit of an argument embedded in it. And let me unpack it for you. One of the things that I think we stop paying attention to in American life is the way in which so many aspects of our lives are seen and understood and perceived through a particular lens, through a metaphor of the machine. We think about economic life, the economy, as a big cogs and gears machine, and either the job creation machine is cranking out jobs or it's not. We think about the economy or the recovery stalling. We use all this kind of mechanistic language. We think about politics and government and community in the same way, in machine terms. Checks and balances and regulation, all this kind of machine brain talk. And while there's some usefulness to that language and to that metaphor, one of the most basic things that I believe is that to properly see each other, to properly see the world in which we're moving, we have to use the metaphor not of the machine, but of the garden. That the economy, our community, the School of Social Work, all these things are complex adaptive systems. They are ecosystems. They are just like gardens. And gardens don't tend themselves. Gardens require gardeners. They require people to seed and weed and feed and tend. And so the idea that a market, for instance, that our marketplace is a perpetual motion, perfectly efficient machine that should best be left to itself, and that the outcomes of the market are inherently moral and correct because they're efficient, is not only misguided, it's insane. Right? And to understand instead that a marketplace is nothing more or less than a garden, and that gardens, when left to themselves entirely, well, they grow for a while. They grow like gangbusters, actually, for a while. But then noxious weeds take over. And those noxious weeds begin to choke off healthy growth. And pretty soon they've choked off the entire garden and it tips over and it dies. That's what happens when you apply a laissez-faire, mechanistic view to a living, dynamic ecosystem. And what is true of an economy is true of pretty much every domain of our lives. And from that simple premise, that metaphorical premise, there are these three ideas that I want to share. There are three really principles and precepts. The first one is simply this: true self-interest is mutual interest. Now again, for everybody in this room, you're a believer already. This won't sound kind of radical to you. But all I ask you to do is to step outside this room for a minute, even in Seattle, anywhere in this country. And the kind of dominant reflexive attitude that people have is that selfishness, true raw self-seeking, is good. Right? There's the Gordon Gekko formulation of it, which is greed is good, but it doesn't even have to be about monetary greed. There's a language in American civic life that glorifies and valorizes pure self-seeking selfishness on the notion somehow that magically, by the invisible hand of the market or otherwise, a million acts of selfishness will add up somehow to the common good. Right? Well, by that same line of thinking, there's two choices that you have. You either are purely self-seeking or you are a selfless altruist, a soft-hearted person who gives up on your self-interest. And I think, quite frankly, that people in the realm of social work, in this broad work of the helping professions, are often lumped into that category. Oh, you all are altruists. Hearts of gold, man. God bless you. You know? You don't care about yourselves. You just give and give and give, right? And there's a certain level on which that is true, of course. You do give. You do have hearts of gold. But I want to help reframe a way that we think about this work. That this work is not charity. This work is not some saintly kind of abnegation of your own interests. This work is self-interest properly understood. This work is recognizing that when I take care of my brother or sister in need, when I take care of those who don't have adults in their lives to take care of them, when I take care of those who have no children to take care of them, when I take care of those who do not have the wherewithal to even comprehend the idea of care or self-care, that I'm not just, quote, doing them a favor out of, quote, the goodness of my heart. that what I'm doing is helping myself in a longer term, more ecosystemic way. That what I'm doing is making the entire body more healthy, and that I am of the body. I am not detached from the body. I am of the body. And so self-interest is truly mutual interest. And this is a thing that we've got to start convincing more of our fellow citizens to understand about the nature of social work. That you're doing this, yes, to be good to others, but you're doing this to be good to yourself too. To be good to your family, your community, the people you care about. And that the expectations on you shouldn't just be that you don't think of yourself, but that you think of yourselves in these other ways. So that's the first precept. True self-interest is mutual interest. The second one I want to share, which grows also out of this way of ecosystemic garden brain thinking, is simply this. Society becomes how you behave. Now here again, this runs kind of against the grain of a lot of American thinking. A lot of American thinking basically says, you know what? I should be able to do whatever the heck I want as long as I'm not actively hurting somebody else, right? That is the ethic of don't tread on me. And everywhere you go in American life, I'm not talking just about conservatives or about party. This is across the ideological spectrum. This is across party lines where there is an American ethic of raw, liberty-focused individualism. And to understand that society becomes how you behave is to recognize something else. Is to recognize that you can't just carve off and cabin off your selfish greed or self-regard from everybody else. That when you choose to be, say, discourteous, that discourtesy is contagious. When you choose to be not compassionate, that lack of compassion is contagious. That when you choose to be uncivil in public conversation, that incivility is contagious. Because we are nodes in a network, because we are woven together, not only in this garden, but in a fabric of relationship and obligation in which our values, our norms, our attitudes, our actions, and our omissions are contagious. It's not like your good acts cancel out my bad acts. It's not like your good attitude cancels out my bad attitude. These things are rapidly, virally contagious. And when we understand that, a positive way to think about that is that every single one of us has the power to set off contagions of good. Every one of us has the power when you choose to be a bit more civil, when you choose to be intentionally courteous, when you choose to be compassionate. Every one of us has the power to set off contagions of norms, values, and behavior that didn't previously exist. There's a billboard that I once saw on this really congested highway. I don't think it was I-5, but it was a congested highway somewhere in Oregon, and traffic was completely at a standstill, and nobody was moving. And the billboard alongside this kind of gridlock said, "You're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic." We're not stuck in uncivil, broken, uncompassionate politics. We are these things. We're not stuck in a community that tolerates an unprecedented gap between the wealthiest and the poorest. We are that community. We're not stuck in an ethic of rampant commercialism that marketizes everything and devalues what really matters. We are that ethical system. There's no way to say that that's someone else's problem or that's someone else's fault. We own it, and we own the possibility of changing it. Which brings me to the third and the final precept that I wanted to share this morning that comes out of this garden brain view of the world. And that is simply this, that we're all better off when we're all better off. Right? And here again, in economic life in particular in America, we think that the dream, the American dream is to get mine, right? And if I get mine, well, the system must be working. And for people who didn't get theirs, well, my example of getting mine will motivate them, right? It'll inspire them to be makers and not takers. It'll prompt them to work a little harder, to grind a little bit more, and to make it just like I made it, right? That is, again, the American ethic in economic life, but I think more broadly in our notions and definitions of success, of what it means to live a successful life, to have opportunity, whether financial or otherwise. And the thing is, when you understand our society in these garden brain terms, and you understand the ways in which our fates are woven together, you understand the ways in which society becomes how you behave, and our interest is always mutually entwined, again, you cannot possibly imagine that your success is severable from the failure of 99%. You cannot imagine that your success is separate from the pain of others around you. And again, to flip it in the affirmative, you begin to imagine that when other people start doing better, economically, emotionally, psychologically, civically, you do better too. That their health is as contagious to you as their sickness once was. We're all better off when we're all better off. I happen to be involved right now in our city in this commission that the mayor has put together on studying a pathway to get us to a $15 minimum wage in Seattle. And there are many arguments about this and many trade-offs and many policy issues of implementation and the rest. But underneath all of the wonky stuff is a basic philosophical choice we have to make. It's a choice between, do we think that we ought to be a city where those who can make it and we celebrate them? Or are we a place where we're all better off when we're all better off? Where, again, the ability of people in the lowest economic strata, in the lowest stations in our society, to the extent that they have more wherewithal, more purchasing power, more voice, more confidence, more presence, more claim on the public square, that's not just great for them, that's not just awesome for how they feel, but that's awesome for business. It's great for our economy. It's great for our civic life. It's great for the health of our community. It's great for our crime rate. It's great for our dependency rates. It's great for the need, the level of need that we have in this community. There's a very simple way to boil down pretty much everything I've said here, which, isn't so much pragmatist in the kind of tradition of the American pragmatists like Dewey and Adams, but it's a bit more, I guess, Asian, karmic, which is what goes around comes around, right? And the work of social work is tending these gardens of democracy. The work of social work is also reminding people all around us that we are in a garden, that we move in a garden, and that work, that responsibility belongs not only to those anointed with titles and status and powerful roles, it belongs to every single one of us as citizens. That to be a citizen is to take ownership. That to be a citizen is to say, this is my problem, not someone else's problem. That to be a citizen is to say, I think I have a right to do something about this. I think I have standing to say something about this. I think I might have the tools to do something about this. That's what it means to be a citizen. And by the way, I'm not talking about citizenship under the strictly legal notions of documentation status under the immigration laws of the United States. There are people in this room, perhaps, certainly on this campus and certainly in our city, who lack that documentation status and live like citizens far more than people whose families have been here for 10 generations. It's not about documentation status. It's about simply whether and how we show up for each other, how and whether we show up for community. And that ethic of being a gardener, showing up for one another, being mindful continuously of the ways in which our own experiences shape us and how our actions and omissions shape others, this is the work of social work, but it's also the work, quite simply, of being grown-ups. And when we think now not only about our lives, but about the lives of the students, young and older, because I know there's a great, beautiful age and life stage diversity among the students at the UW School of Social Work. When we think about the students who are, whatever their chronological age, young in their learning lives right now, young in their experiential lives, their abilities to connect practice and theory, to connect those dots. When we think about them, our responsibility as grown-ups, our responsibility as people who already show that we can show up pretty early in the morning for each other, for a gathering like this, our responsibility is to make sure that we invest in these students. And that when we invest in these students, when in a little while we get asked to fill out these pledge cards, that we do so not grudgingly but happily. And that we do so not thinking this is my act of charity, deductible on my tax forms, but that this is my act of investment, payable back to me in the health of my community. And when we do that, when we take that kind of ownership and act like grown-ups in that way, we will be setting an example that will make our students proud, make our dean proud, and make the entire university and community in Seattle here proud of the UW School of Social Work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Those were great words, very thought-provoking, and thank you also for autographing my book. I appreciate that. So you've challenged us to think about our role as social justice agents, our role as citizens in an increasingly interconnected social landscape, and you use the word ecosystem. You also asked us to think about who has influenced us, and I thought as you were speaking, there are many people who are in the room. Many are personal friends, many are mentors, and one in particular is one of my guests today. When I was a volunteer at Denny Place Youth Shelter, Anna Leary encouraged me to go to graduate school along with many other people. So I think about your words, and it's pretty powerful when we think about the tenets that you've left us with. I especially appreciate the insight on the variety of how we behave becomes how others behave. So I've heard you say that a couple of times, and I've mentioned it to others, and it resonates with a lot of people. So thank you for that. So we now have the opportunity to take inspiration from our students who work every day in local communities and to create change, who recognize the importance of transcending polarization and focusing on community cooperation. So let's listen to their point of view.
My name is Riley Waite-Jones, and I am a first-year MSW Day student.
My name is Robert Ramirez. I go by Bobby. I'm a first-year student in the MSW Day program.
My full name is Lovely Brie. I am a student of social work, doing a master's in social work at the daytime program.
And I saw social work as the best way for me to really live my passion for social justice and supporting and doing meaningful one-on-one work with people in my career.
I do have my BASW, and I graduated from the University of Washington. Working in the last 7 years really reinforced my commitment to social work as I was a CPS investigator. But then also that I went back and worked with my own tribe, the Yakima Nation, as the Deputy Director of Social Services.
The person that inspired me the most to pursue social work is my oldest son. His name is Aiden. He is autistic. The start of our journey to discovering his diagnosis, I'd wish I had somebody to guide me and my family. He inspired me to become more of an advocate and resource for other families like myself.
I think that my dream job would be working in direct service with LGBTQ trauma survivors.
My dream job would be to have a community center where I would have an indoor playground for parents with special needs, because that's a bit of anxiety for us.
I'm working my dream job. Any aspect that helps regain, support, or address the needs of people. That's my dream job, being a social worker. That's why I'm here. That's why I will continue to be here.
Knowing that I had the opportunity to go to school in North Carolina where I had in-state tuition, but wasn't gonna get the education that I wanted, I was getting ready to move out to Seattle and was definitely doing a lot of looking at my bank statements, trying to figure out how I was really going to afford this big move, what it was really going to look like for me to go into debt for my education.
So we had talked about coming to Seattle for 6 years, then finally it was the time. Once I got here, I just kept meeting people who reminded me of social work. This is your calling. You know, it was like the universe was saying, it's time.
Before I applied to the School of Social Work, I was working. Unfortunately, I lost my job. So I borrowed money to move my whole family and my life from Yakima, Washington to Seattle. It takes a lot to move a whole bunch of people.
I got the email saying that I got the breakfast scholarship and I was so elated.
Receiving the scholarship has definitely been life-sustaining.
So the day that I found out I got the scholarship, it was about 12:30 at night, and I opened up the email, and I was kind of mouthing silently, I got in! And I kind of jumped up. I don't think I've ever been that excited about something other than the birth of my children.
You know, and I think that it also really allowed me to feel like I was being seen for the work that I've done and the work that I hope to do in the future, and kind of gave me a little bit of a boost of confidence coming into school. The breakfast scholarship may seem like a small thing, but allowing students to continue to make the most out of their education really has a large ripple effect into what the future of social work could look like.
The scholarship helped in way more ways than I could ever explain in a couple-minute video. It helped to support the life that I'm seeking so that I may help others.
Scholarship has impacted me in a way that I always wanted the donors to know that they're making not just my dreams come true, but my children's dreams come true. And with that, it's going to keep the cycle going because I'm not going to stop just at my dreams, but I'm going to make others' dreams come true. And their contribution made it possible because I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep touching as many lives as possible. And that's what they've meant to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I personally want to thank Lovely Brie, Riley Waite-Jones, and Robert Ramirez for telling their story. I know Robert is here this morning. So Robert, stand up real quickly. Let us acknowledge. We're acknowledging your courage to tell your story. Thank you for moving your family, and thank you for being a part of the school and your way of thinking about things. We've heard some amazing stories this morning from our students and from each other. As we came in this morning, I overheard people giving updates on what was happening in their lives and their own personal and professional stories. And so as we think about the School of Social Work and what it has made and the work that it has done across not only our state and throughout our community, but also in our lives, again, personally and professionally, I'm inviting you to be a part of the story. Several months ago, we mourned the passing of Nelson Mandela, a true world citizen and agent of transformative social change. And as a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary, politician, and philanthropist who served as president of South Africa, President Mandela was famously known for saying, "Education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world." So think about the words that you heard today. Think about Eric's call to action and the points that he mentioned from the Gardens of Democracy, where he writes about the value of reciprocity, which he calls a strength. And for those of you that are affiliated with the School of Social Work, we often talk about strengths-based. So reciprocity, he calls a strength. Think about the stories that the students have shared, and think about your role as an agent in social change. And to my fellow social workers and friends here today, think about reciprocity and its importance in building a future together. The students that we've heard from today, Lovely, Robert, and Riley, are the future, and they will help transform the world. Today, I'm asking you to give from your heart so that the talented students who get into school next year can stay in school and create their own social work story of transformation. So together, we can improve the lives of others, remove the financial barriers standing in the way of our students from reaching their potential and realizing their dreams. So this is the part where the ask comes in. And so I'm going to let you know that making a pledge is very easy. So at each place setting, there's a pledge card and an envelope. So please take a few minutes to make your contribution and then hand your envelope to your table host. And please let us know if there's an opportunity to expand your gift through a matching program. All right. So on behalf of the School of Social Work and the wonderful social work community, thank you very much for making so many dreams come true. Thank you for joining us this morning. We deeply, deeply appreciate your support. Table hosts, please collect the envelopes. And please also accept the beautiful centerpieces as an acknowledgement and token of our appreciation. This concludes the 5th annual scholarship breakfast for the School of Social Work. I invite you to mix and mingle, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.